fired for sleeping with the boss's wife. Yes, that boss. Fleetwood Mac in the mid-70s was already a soap opera with amplifiers, but Bob Weston somehow found a way to raise the stakes. He started an affair with Jenny Boyd, who happened to be married to the band's own namesake, Mick Fleetwood, which is a bold strategy for someone hoping to keep their job. You can imagine how well that landed. Mick found out mid-tour, and the fallout was immediate and brutal. Weston was fired on the spot, and the band canceled the rest of the American tour entirely, refunds and all. Not a quiet parting of ways, in other words. It nearly ended Fleetwood Mac years before. Rumors turned their romantic chaos into the best-selling breakup album of all the time. Funny how that works. The band that later built an empire on singing about their own affairs almost didn't survive this one first. Yes, timing really is everything. Next one got fired for refusing to cover Elvis. Who actually gets fired from Motörhead? The band that basically invented not caring over an Elvis Presley cover. Fast Eddie Clarke did. That's who. Lemmy wanted to record a version of Stand By Your Man as a duet with Wendy O. Williams of the Plasmatics, which sounds like a fever dream, even by Motörhead standards. Eddie thought the whole project was a genuinely embarrassing detour for a band built on speed and volume, and he flat out refused to touch it. That disagreement, small as it sounds, blew the classic lineup apart for good. For years, the story going around was that Eddie simply quit, tired of the road. Eddie always told it differently. He insisted right up until his death in 2018 that he was fired, plain and simple, over a song choice he still thought was ridiculous. Either way, one of metal's most iconic lineups ended over Tammy Wynette. Stranger than fiction, honestly. Then we have being fired for dating the drummer's fiance. There's an unwritten rule in every band, and this one apparently needed spelling out. Richie Kotzen, brought in to replace the chaos that was CeCe DeVille, seemed like the perfect fix for Poison. Phenomenal player, clean image, and finally a guitarist who showed up on time. For a minute, it looked like smooth sailing. Then Kotzen started a relationship with drummer Ricky Rocket's fiance, and smooth sailing turned into a full-blown mutiny.
Promises made in the heat of the night. Sure spit 'em out, but them long past you.
The friendship and the band's fragile new chemistry collapsed almost overnight. When it came down to picking sides, the rest of Poison sided with their drummer, and Kotzen was out after barely a year. The kicker? He's never really apologized for any of it. Kotzen has said in interviews he doesn't regret the relationship one bit, which, fair play to him, is either admirable honesty or spectacularly bad PR. Either way, Poison learned that talent doesn't buy loyalty.
You know I would change it all if you would be mine, yeah. If I could do it, I would do it right now.
This man was fired for never finding the end of a solo. Apparently you can be too good at your job. Vinnie Vincent joined Kiss in the early 80s as the Ank Warrior, and Gene Simmons genuinely loved what he brought to the songwriting. Life, though, was a completely different story. Vincent reportedly treated the setlist as more of a gentle suggestion, stretching his solos longer every single night and ignoring cues from the rest of the band entirely. He wasn't just playing the songs anymore, he was auditioning over them, trying to outshine Paul Stanley on Paul Stanley's own stage. Eventually, Stanley had enough of sharing the spotlight with someone who clearly didn't want to share it back, and Vincent was gone. Here's the twist that makes it almost poetic. Years later, in his own band, guess what got him fired again? His own soloing. Some people never learn even when they wrote the entire textbook on the exact lesson themselves. Next up, fired in his sleep, literally. If even Metallica, a band not exactly famous for clean living in the 80s, thinks you're drinking too much, you've crossed a genuinely impressive line. Dave Mustaine was a founding guitarist, a phenomenal talent, and also, by most accounts, an absolute nightmare to be in a van with. Constantly drunk, picking fights, smashing gear, generally impossible to control on any given night. After one incident too many, James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, and Cliff Burton made the call. No sit down, no warning, no dramatic band meeting. Dave simply went to sleep on the tour bus one night and woke up the next morning unemployed, handed a one-way bus ticket home like a parting gift nobody asked for. Brutal, obviously. But here's the twist that makes this the most consequential firing in heavy metal history. That humiliation is exactly what pushed Mustaine to form Megadeth, one of Metallica's biggest rivals for decades. Talk about lighting a fire. Next up, fired for botching the intro on Life TV. One bad night on television is apparently all it takes. It's 1991, the MTV Video Music Awards, and Poison is opening the whole show. CC, reportedly a little worse for wear, was supposed to launch into Talk Dirty to Me. Instead, he kept starting the intro to a completely different song, over and over, Life, on camera, in front of the entire industry. Bret Michaels eventually just stopped singing and stood there. Somehow the band limped through and finished the performance anyway, which honestly deserves its own medal for damage control. Backstage was a different story entirely. Bret reportedly punched CC right after they walked off, and the fallout from that single performance effectively ended his run in the band not long after. One song, one wrong intro, repeated just enough times to become rock history's most cringe-worthy blooper reel. Poison never quite lived that broadcast down, honestly. This one is crazy. Fired for being too quiet. Picture this. You pay roughly $600 out of your own pocket to fund a struggling band's debut album, and they thank you by firing you for not talking enough. That's exactly what happened to Jason Everman. He covered the recording costs for Nirvana's Bleach and got his photo on the album cover, despite not playing a single note on the record itself. He joined for touring duties afterward, but Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic reportedly felt he never quite fit the band's chemistry. He barely interacted with the rest of them on the road, and after a few months, that was that. He was out. Most guitarists would spiral after getting dumped by a band that became Nirvana. Everman did the opposite. He became a U.S. Army Ranger, then a Green Beret, serving tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. From rock obscurity to actual special forces. Most unexpected career pivot in music history? Easily. Never knew you could be fired over a pair of trousers? Only Lemmy could dislike a pair of trousers enough to make it rock history. Brian Robertson joined Motörhead fresh off his run in Thin Lizzy, and by all accounts, he was an outstanding guitarist. The problem was everything around the playing. Expensive clothes, a flashy rock star image, and, most notoriously, a pair of bright red trousers that clashed spectacularly with the leather and denim uniform Motörhead had built its entire identity around. Lemmy later joked that Robertson looked more like he'd wandered in from Duran Duran than a Motörhead session. But let's be honest, the trousers were never really the actual issue. They were just the visible symptom of a much bigger problem. Constant personality clashes, musical disagreements, and a complete culture mismatch between a punk metal power trio and a guy who wanted to look like a pop star. Robertson's run barely lasted, and those red trousers outlived his entire tenure in fan memory. Then this one, fired for smiling too much. Steve Harris looked at his own guitarist and decided the man was, and I quote pretty much every retelling of the story, simply too happy. Dennis Stratton played on Iron Maiden's self-titled debut album, and by most accounts, he was a genuinely solid player who loved touring America, stayed friendly with journalists, and had a soft spot for classic rock bands like the Eagles. All fairly normal stuff for a working musician, you'd think. Except Steve Harris had a very specific, very dark, very tough image in mind for where Maiden was headed, and a smiling guitarist who got along with everybody apparently didn't fit that vision. Only months after the debut record dropped, Stratton was gone, replaced almost immediately. To this day, plenty of fans still scratch their heads over the timing since the album did perfectly fine. Sometimes it's not about talent at all. Sometimes a band just decides you're vibing wrong. And finally, fired by fax. Not a phone call, not even a proper meeting, just a single brutally cold fax. George Lynch and singer Don Dokken had despised each other for years by the late 80s. Despite the band riding high on albums like Underlock and Key and Back for the Attack, Don reportedly saw Lynch as a miserable, difficult presence, while Lynch saw Don as a controlling ego with a gigantic chip on his shoulder. That tension boiled over completely in the back of a limo in London in 1988, when Lynch snapped and punched Dokken outright before a gig at Wembley Arena. The band limped on for one more messy stretch before Lynch, back home in Arizona, received the news of his own firing in the most impersonal way imaginable. A one-sentence fax reading simply, "George, we've decided to fire you," signed by his own bandmates. No warning, no closure, just paper. Rock and roll, folks. Never, ever boring. So there you have it. 10 guitarists shown the door for reasons ranging from genuinely scandalous to almost unbelievably petty. Wrong trousers, too many solos, one very awkward cover song, all of it apparently enough to end a career in these bands. What do you think? Did I miss a firing that deserves a spot on this list? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if stories like this are exactly your kind of classic rock rabbit hole, hit subscribe and stick around for more.